Hello noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking. Today I would like to talk about beards in ancient times. Alright, lately in the last few videos that I've made, I've noticed that quite a few people have been asking me a question regarding the Roman soldiers. The question being, would the Roman soldiers be allowed to wear a beard? Now, this is an interesting question and I am going to discuss it and answer it in this video. But I think that the whole concept of men with beards in ancient times is interesting. So not only Roman soldiers, but also the whole Roman countrymen and other civilizations. So starting with the Romans, how did the whole question of clean-shaven, bearded work for the Romans first, and then for Roman soldiers? Well, the thing is, it really depends, and I think I can't really stress this point enough in my videos. So whenever this kind of question is raised, could the Romans wear a beard, we should always answer back with another question. When in Roman time are we talking about? From that will depend the kind of answer that we will give. So to give it a simple answer, to make it simple, we can say that during the Roman kingdom, then the Romans did have beards. And as a matter of fact, the whole concept of shaving was introduced by King Lucius Tarquinius Priscus in the 6th century. And when we say introduced, it means that he encouraged his fellow countrymen to shave, but it was not a fashion yet. It will become a fashion by the time of the late Republic. So this is when the Romans, including the Roman soldiers, started to be clean-shaven, and that would start to be the common and typical look of a Roman. Having said that the Romans during the kingdom and the early Republic had beards, we have to consider the kind of beard that the Romans wore were different from the beards that the Greeks wore. Greek beards tend to be very curly, and we can see this in statues. So the Greek had great pride in their beards. It was something that they liked having, and it was very much the look of a philosopher, for example. But the Romans were not particularly interested in that kind of very curly and sumptuous beard. As a matter of fact, that was a little bit off-putting for the Romans. So whenever a Roman during the kingdom would wear a beard, or would have a beard, it would be trimmed and neat. But as we said, during the late Republic, you would immediately distinguish a Roman, because most Romans would shave, including soldiers. How did that become a fashion? Well, you need to understand that fashion at the time was dictated by the emperor's whim. But not only the emperor, also by generals, because Roman emperors and Roman generals were dramatically important and crucial figures at the time. Men would die for their general and commanding officers, and because upon his ability to lead the army to victory depended your own life. So the kind of psychological bond that you had between Roman soldiers and their general was incredible. The emperor, on the other hand, had a very similar kind of power, coming from a different concept. The idea of the emperor, or the imperator, being the ruler of the known world. So emperors did have this kind of fashion of shaving, but a general that actually had a habit of shaving every day was Scipio Africanus. So yes, he's very famous for many other things, like the Battle of Zama, Second Punic War, but he should be remembered also for this, introducing this new fashion. As a matter of fact, this is when all his men started to basically copy him, and it became widespread among all other military officers and generals to be like him, to look like him. Also because you need to consider that he was the hero of Rome. He was the one who defeated Hannibal at the Battle of Zama. So again, he was shaving every day, kind of created a whole new fashion. And this is when really the Romans become all clean-shaven, or most of them. Now this whole concept of fashion, though, we need to consider that has to do with nobles and soldiers. The low classes never really followed much these kind of fashions and trends, also because most of the times they couldn't even afford to follow these kind of trends. So you did have barbers at the time of Rome, but not everyone could afford them. So to answer the question more specifically, more precisely, so was it actually a rule after Skippy Africanus started shaving for all his men? Well, it wasn't 100% of a rule. The men were encouraged to shave, and most did, but there was an exception to this, and as a matter of fact, in times of mourning or grief, if someone in your family had passed away, you were allowed to grow a beard for the whole time of mourning. And this is something that has to do with Egyptian culture, and it was something that the Egyptians did. But we will go back to the Egyptians in a little bit, but let's finish up with the Romans first. So having said all this, Roman reenactors should then start considering the idea of shaving to be historically accurate. It depends again. It's not as simple as sometimes I see in forums, like Roman soldiers never had a beard. Well, it depends. We have just mentioned about the exception when you were in time of grief, etc. But there were other exceptions. And again, it depends what time we're talking about, because it is around the 2nd century, so we're talking about Hadrian's time, the fashion of wearing a trimmed and neat beard came again into vogue. With the emperor himself having a beard. And again, the emperor wears a beard, lots of people will, including soldiers. And we see this in iconography. Columns and statues representing soldiers before the 2nd century tend to represent them most of the times clean-shaven, whereas after the 2nd century we start seeing soldiers with beards and moustache in the Roman army. So Imperial Roman army of the 2nd century can have bearded soldiers, perhaps among the veterans, for example, or a little bit older soldiers. So again, it really depends. If you are representing or reenacting an imperial legion, then you should be free to wear a beard if you want to do so. Now, some people have brought up this concept of not having a beard while you are in the army because an enemy during hand-to-hand combat could grab you from the beard and then you could lose the fight, hence all the generals wanted men to have... Okay, we need to be careful when we say these things, because it is true that some population have made some specific choices, not only for the looks as far as the army is concerned, but also for very practical reasons. Even Japanese samurai would shave the whole upper and front part of their hair, because that way during combat the long hair will not get in the way, blinding you, for instance. So I can understand and agree that a soldier should not have a very long beard like a Greek philosopher. But on the other hand, a beard like mine cannot be grabbed in combat. How can you grab me like this without me even trying to react? I mean, I've got my weapon. Unless I've got a really long beard, then I can understand. But with a short beard or a medium length beard, I don't see any problem in combat at all. If you get that close, we are already fighting. And in order to grab my beard, you need to have an empty hand, which means either you don't have a shield, and it's a big problem, or you don't have a weapon, even worse. Now, as I have mentioned the Egyptians, for the Egyptians, for instance, being clean-shaven was very, very important. It was a symbol of cleanliness, so similar to late Roman Republic, but it went beyond that. We're supposed to to shave their entire body in order to be clean before the gods during their sacrifices and rites. Interestingly enough, though, they wore a fake beard. So this is kind of a strange situation, isn't it? I mean, they had a fashion for having a very long beard. I mean, we see these kind of beards even at the famous tomb of Tutankhamun, although we need to consider that the kind of long beard that Tutankhamun wears, that kind of shape is a kind of shape only worn by the dead, so it's not something that you would wear during your normal life. But there were many other shapes of fake beards that were worn by people and male Egyptians just for style. So again, you had to shave, but on the other hand, they still appreciated that kind of look so much that even some pharaohs and women pharaohs had them, and we see that again in statues and iconography. The Vikings, someone has asked me this question when I talked about medieval hair style and fashion, considering that I have very long hair. Someone has asked me, so did the Vikings really have a beard, or is that just pop culture? Well, again, we are talking about First of all, we're not talking about the population. When we talk about the Vikings, we're talking about a certain amount of people, a group of people who went on these Vikings, meaning these expeditions overseas. So again, we're not even talking about the whole population here. We're talking of just a selected group. And again, I think people will be different, just like today. I mean, some people have a beard, some people don't. In my life, I've changed it a million times. So I don't think there was just all Vikings had a beard or all Vikings didn't. Again, this is something that we tend to do a bit too much when we talk about the ancient. When the Vikings had long hair and beards, and we need to consider that even from a religious point of view, if we look at Norse religion, for example, the god Thor was represented having a very long red beard. So we see that even within their religion, and even Christian religion, if you imagine Jesus Christ, the concept of a bearded man is always a concept of a very wise man, even to the level of a god. So most likely they did have that kind of fashion. But one thing that often is misunderstood is the idea of the Vikings being barbaric and dirty. That is completely wrong. Actually, interestingly enough, Vikings, considering that if we look at the burial chambers and burial places where we find a lot of objects for trimming and cutting and plucking the hair and the beard and facial hair, and we even find objects to clean the nails. Most likely the Vikings were very clean, and even if they had very long hair, as they probably did, or some of them did, and perhaps very long beard, imitating their own gods, etc., they must have been very neat and very clean. Alright, I hope that this video answered your question. If you have other questions, please ask me in the comments below and let me know. Do you have a beard? Is it long? Is it short? Or do you prefer to be clean shaven? Also, what do you think? Should I shave my beard or should I let it grow? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.